On page 172, our close read asks us to mark the details that reveals Anne's self-described change in perspective as well as her attitude toward the future. And in paragraph 68, we see her saying, I know I'd be bored to death with normal things, the things that we used to do before the war. I think more seriously about life now. I want to be a journalist or something. I love to write. So we have two things going on here. Number one, Anne is physically growing up. She is, she's gone from somewhere around maybe 12 or 13 years old to nearly 15 years old. And so, that's a natural time of growing up, but she's also had to deal with a lot of stuff. She had a relatively carefree time before the war, or at least before the war came to Amsterdam. And she talks about playing ping pong at Yopi's house and having an ice cream eating contest. And those are things that would just be inane right now, considering all the things that they've been through. So she certainly is going to have a more mature outlook on it. Ultimately, though, I think the thing that we want to keep looking at here in this play is that Anne is hopeful, much like her father, always looking toward the future, looking toward what are we going to do when we get out of here. Not an if we get out of here, I sure hope we don't die, and boy, this is awful, like kind of a Mr. Doozle attitude. Instead, she has an attitude very much like her father, which is thinking about the future, always looking toward the future and what's she going to do when they get out of there. So much of the character development in this play is developed through dialogue, characters talking with one another and revealing things about themselves. This is one of the situations where we get to see what's going on by the physical actions of the characters. So in paragraph 119, you are marking the movements. This is stage directions, but you're marking the things that would tell us how these characters are feeling. So this is an interesting piece. And it's one of my favorite parts of the play, especially the movement that is not marked on this page, but just below where it says she hurries off to her room. Mrs. Von Don looks after her and then looks over at Peter's room. Her suspicions are confirmed and she says, aha. In the play that we watched, we didn't see a very good version of that, but in the way the play is written, I think I would really focus on the Mrs. Von Don kind of exaggeratedly looking to figure out what the heck did that girl just do as she looked at me over here. And then all of a sudden her head slowly looks back over to where she just came from out of Peter's room. And then it dawns on her what just happened. So, ultimately what we're seeing is even in spite of all the craziness of them having to be in hiding for this long, they're still kind of having normal teenage activities. They're still having a normal, somewhat normal life, as normal as they can have it. And they're having normal teenage. Now they're developing a relationship. This is a neat little close read and a very quick one. When Meep comes over, she is just wearing a man's raincoat over top of her night clothes, her pajamas. She didn't even stop and get dressed. The news is so sudden and so exciting, and she had to just come tell them. So she didn't bother to, make herself presentable for going out. She just literally threw a raincoat on over her pajamas and came. The theme of this play is that Anne's optimism plays through everything. In fact, that's how the play ends up, which is Mr. Frank reading back to the one sequence where she says, in spite of everything, I still believe that people are good at heart. So it's Anne's optimism that really stands out in this play. This is an example of that optimism where it asks for the words and phrases related to sight, touch, hearing, smell, or taste. It's been 2 years that they've been in this annex. She hasn't been able to see flowers, smell flowers, walk in the park. She hasn't been able to do any of these things. And yet somehow she manages to remain optimistic when Peter is not at all optimistic, but she is kind of that indomitable spirit there. So I think that's the essence of the close read on page 184. This brings us to the end of the close reads for scenes 2 through 5.